Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Withdrawals Call Series #1, hosted by EthStaker. We've got some special guests today to talk to us about withdrawals. We're going to run this call as a general overview so that people who are stakers, non-stakers, anyone in Ethereum can get a good overview of what withdrawals are, what they mean for people, who doesn't have to worry about them. We'll run this as sort of like a Q&A, ask the experts that we've invited here for more information on them. And just for some introductions, we have Fizz, Nix, Remy, Buddha, Nolan, Sam, Thorsten from EthStaker. And then we have Barnabas from the EF. Barnabas, do you want to introduce yourself at all?
Yes, my name is Barnabas Bussa, and I've been working for the EF in the past 6 months, and I'm mainly responsible for working on the withdrawal devnet and testnet, and we're going to be launching the public testnet for withdrawals tomorrow.
Awesome. And we've got Pooja and Tim from the Ethereum Cat Herders. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves?
I'm Pooja from Ethereum Cat Herders. So we are here to share information about network upgrades. So we have a video series called PeepanEIP. I'll maybe talk about it in detail later on, but happy to be here.
Hi everyone, my name is Tim. I run the execution layer awkward calls. So yeah, I've been working on withdrawals these past couple months. Happy to share some context on all of that.
Awesome. And we've also got Langers from Rocket Pool, which is a staking service.
Hello everyone. Langers from the Rocket Pool core team. Obviously withdrawals affects us quite a bit. But yeah, great to have this conversation.
Awesome. And we've also got Ben from Consensus.
Hey everybody. So yes, I am product lead for Teku Consensus client and longtime friend of EthStaker. So happy to be here.
Awesome. So this call, like I said, is going to be a broad overview, accessible for anyone who's a staker or not a staker. We're going to do a series of likely 4 calls, depending on how this all washes out. The second is going to be a more technical call. It's going to be geared towards stakers and node operators, and they can ask questions like setting your withdrawal address, converting the 0x00 to 0x01, walkthrough on testnet withdrawals if that's released by that time, how to tell if you're in the queue, how to watch your validator on something like Beacon Chain. The third call will be another general call, and it'll be an update on timelines, new stuff that we've learned, latest recommendations. And the fourth one will be a live stream watch party of the upgrade.
I'm going to be watching the transaction queue. Like that's going to be so interesting to see what happens 5 seconds after that fork, isn't it?
There's been a lot of talk on Twitter in the last few weeks on what exactly we're going to see, and it's going to be interesting to see whose predictions are correct. All right. So the first thing that I want to talk about is for the people who are wondering sort of what how this is going to affect them. Maybe people haven't heard of like Shanghai and Capella and like don't know what's going on. Tim, I have a question for you. Who in your mind should not worry about this hard fork and should not concern themselves with withdrawals at all?
So I guess if you're just using the Ethereum chain, this won't affect you, right? Like, so, and by using, I mean, you know, sending transactions, receiving transactions. As with every hard fork, or as much as we try to, it should be like, it should not affect any of the deployed contracts or break any of the user experience there. So I think that's probably the only group that doesn't have to worry. Everyone else, so I think if you run a node, if you're a staker, you should pay attention. There's a couple of small changes on the EL side that are like interesting for smart contract devs as well. If you're an infrastructure provider, if you're a crypto exchange, then yeah, you should be paying attention.
What if I'm a solo staker who like I'm not in a hurry to get my funds out? Like you
still need to upgrade your node
now.
Yeah, so you don't have to withdraw. This is, and we can get into this in more detail after, but depending on how you've set up your validators, you're either going to be withdrawn automatically or you're going to have to sign a message to process withdrawals. But assuming that you're not withdrawn automatically, there's no forcing function for you to withdraw. You can just keep your stake as is. But that said, you still need to upgrade your node because everybody else is, and the consensus rules changes. And if you don't do that, you'll be sort of stuck on your little island, separated from the rest of the Ethereum network.
Tim, what if I am I'm not a node operator, but I am a staker, and I deposited my ETH into some sort of pooled staking protocol?
Yeah, so then you as a user won't have to do anything before the fork. You should make sure that whether you've deposited your ETH in an on-chain pool or at an exchange or something, you should make sure they're paying attention and ask them what their plans are. And what I expect the average experience will be is like your service provider in the next weeks to months will put out something that explains how they handle withdrawals, what their process is. And if it's something where like you can have a voice as a user, if you're using Rocket Pool, if you're using Lido or something like that, and they have forums where to discuss this, it might make sense for you to review that. But then the withdrawals should then give you a way to get your funds back or unlocked after it happens. So say you've deposited on Kraken or Coinbase, after withdrawals, it'll be possible to convert back that ETH that was deposited on the Beacon chain to ETH on the execution layer. Yeah, so I expect different service providers will have different announcements in the next few weeks. But if you're a user of one of those, you should be asking them what their plan is. And if they have a way to provide input for that, then it's a good time to do so.
Sweet. So just as a wrap up, anyone who's not staking, if you're just using Ethereum, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to worry about this hard fork. If you're using something like Coinbase or Kraken, you can withdraw. You might be able to withdraw after the fork, so you could ask them what their plan is. And anybody who's doing using an LSD, be in contact with your protocol. And anyone who is a node operator should be paying attention and should definitely watch our next call on specifics about what node operators have to do.
Yeah, and one more thing I'll add as well. When you mentioned LSD, so LSDs have mostly dealt with transaction fees since the merge, right? Like, so say you use Rocket Pool or Lido or Swize or another one of those. I believe they all pretty much just take the transaction fees that they produce in blocks and restake them and help like compound your staking rewards that way. It's not as clear to me that like most of the centralized staking providers have like done much with transaction fees since the merge. So if you are a user of one of those, this is a good time to ask them. Just as a heads up, you should have been accruing transaction fees since the merge. And potentially those are still locked or your staking provider hasn't like gotten around to unlocking those and making them redeemable. But those should already be freely available, and with withdrawals, if you haven't seen those, it's a good time to ask the question again. Yeah.
Cool. So now that we've gone over sort of like who should be paying attention, I'm going to pass it off to Fizz so we can actually talk about what withdrawals are and what Shanghai and Capella are.
Awesome. And I want to slip a quick thing in there. We are having a hard fork, and there's always, for people who are relatively new, or maybe even with some experience, you're not sure what a hard fork means. It means that we're upgrading the protocol, not that there will necessarily be two different coins after the fork. If you watched the merge, that maybe that ETH POW was a coin fork, and I think that has totally fizzled out. So anytime there is a hard fork upgrade, there's the potential for someone to split coins, but based on the nature of this upgrade, it's very unlikely. I don't think anyone suspects that there will be someone trying to split coins. Does everyone agree with that? Is that fair? Okay. So Tim, I have more questions for you. High level, and again, I love the nature of this call because even me, I've been I've been following this stuff for years, and I still get into many like all core devs calls, and I'm overwhelmed. So can you tell us at the highest level, what is withdrawals? What are we excited about?
Right. Yeah. I also get overwhelmed in some of the all core devs, so not just you. Yeah, withdrawals. So if you look at the Beacon chain today, the way that you get Ether on it and activate as a validator, you need to send 32 ETH at least to this Beacon chain deposit contract. The Beacon chain then basically follows this contract. So all of the nodes there will just query the execution layer, look at it, process new deposits, and activate those as new validators. And then, when you activate it as a validator, as you know, like if you do the right things, if you attest to blocks, if you produce blocks, if you're part of sync committees, you accrue rewards as part of your balance there. If you do the wrong things, obviously you might get penalties. And one way or another, you might want to either fully withdraw your validator, so stop being a validator, get your ETH back, and kind of move on, or just withdraw your rewards, right? Like, so say you've deposited 32 ETH, and now it's been a couple years since the Beacon chain launch. I think the average validator balance is around 34 ETH. So a lot of people want to get those 2 ETH back in rewards that they've accrued and keep their validator there. So withdrawals, the feature will basically enable both those things. So both full withdrawals for validators who've decided that they don't want to be a validator, or who've been slashed and sort of the protocol has decided for them they can no longer be a validator, or people who just want to get their rewards sent back to the execution layer. And at the highest level, this is what withdrawals does. It's the opposite of the deposit. Deposit, you're sending ETH from execution layer to Beacon chain. Withdrawals takes your ETH from the Beacon chain, credits it to you on the execution layer. And it's a bit of a different process. So when we have this deposit contract, the Beacon chain and the execution layer were quite unaware of each other. So actually, the execution layer you can think of was not even aware that there was a Beacon chain until the merge, right? There was just this contract with a balance, and then the Beacon chain would look at it and use that to update its state. But the merge is really when sort of the execution layer became aware that there's a Beacon chain and handed over sort of the consensus rules to it. And so now that we have this, it's possible for the Beacon chain to tell the execution layer, hey, credit this ETH back to these accounts because it's no longer needed or tracked as part of the Beacon chain. So high level, this is what it does. We can get into the details of like how it works specifically, but it's really just a way for people to get back their stake from the consensus layer.
Okay, so let's say that I'm new and I'm hearing all this talk about withdrawals, and this fork is happening in 8 or 12 weeks. If I'm a staker right now, if I made a deposit right now, how would I get my funds back out like right now?
Yeah. So so there's 2 requirements for a withdrawal to be processed. One is that you have a 0x1 credential. So if you've been like an early validator, you might have deposited and used like a BLS key pair, so that what we call 0x0 credentials. If you have those, you need to sign an extra message to change your withdrawal credential to a 0x1 credential, which is basically a normal ETH address. And the reason there is that your 0xO credential is just it's just a BLS key. It doesn't map to any Ethereum address, so the protocol could not know where to send the ETH to. So by signing this message, you're sort of telling the protocol, send the ETH to this address. Today, if you launch a new validator, you can just have this from the start, so you don't need to sign this transition message. But this is like the first precondition that you need to make a withdrawal, is you need a valid 0x01 credential. And then at the fork, basically at the Capella fork, is when we're going to enable people to change those on chain. So right now you could have deposited with either of those, but if you have a 0xO, you can't move to 0x1. As of the fork, you'll be able to do that. Assuming you have a 0x1 credential, the other thing that you need to withdraw is basically a balance above your 32 ETH, or to be exited as a validator, or actually, sorry, to be like fully exited, so withdrawable. So if you have a balance above 32 ETH, and you're still a validator, what happens is that every block, we just scan the validators and we find the first 16 who are like, for whom we can withdraw something, whether it's a full withdrawal or a partial withdrawal, and we just process those as part of the block. And it's proof of stake people might not know this, but it's going to happen similarly to how proof of work rewards were calculated on the execution layer, where there's not like an actual transaction in the block that gives you the ETH. So like when we had proof of stake, the block would start, we would just say, hey, plus 2 ETH to the miner, and then move on with all the transactions. This is actually the same thing that happens with the withdrawals. Small difference is that it happens at the end of the block, but that's technical detail. But basically, every block, you look for 16 validators who have something to withdraw. So they have a 0x1 credential. They're either fully withdrawable or they have an excess balance. You process those, and then the block after that, you look at the next 16. And the last just detail to add is if you're doing your full withdrawal, there is what we call the exit queue. So similarly to how when you deposit, you need some time to get activated. When you want to exit your validator, you need some time before you're fully withdrawable. And this is to make sure we can't change the validator set over too quickly. So your full withdrawal is only processed when you're like at the end of that exit queue. And so this is kind of the weird thing. It's like you can think of it as being like 2 queues or like a queues in a scan, where like on one hand, every block, some amount of validators who've exited can become withdrawable. And then every block, we also scan over just linearly the index of validators and find the next that are withdrawable and process those withdrawals. Yeah, hopefully that wasn't too complicated.
Yeah, no, that was
break
great.
down every one of those. But yeah.
But it can be a lot. And my overall intention is to get the broad overview. I want to ask 2 questions, and I want to preface these by saying I know better than to ask for dates. That's not something that I'm trying to do, but I also recognize that people who are learning about this need to have something to latch onto. And so what I will ask for is a range, and you can make that range as narrow or as wide as you like. And my first question is, in terms of code completeness, and again, give me a range that's between 0. You can say anything. How complete is the code that's required to deploy withdrawals?
So I think we're getting there. Like maybe high level. This is like more useful than dates, hopefully. So
that's my next question.
We're gonna launch a new testnet called hope I pronounced this right, Zhejiang. But the idea there is to launch a new testnet where stakers can join it and test their withdrawals. So if you are a staker, this is going to launch in like the next few days, max a week. You should join that, and you can run through the whole process on it. And because it's a new testnet, it'll be super quick to sync and do everything. Oh, it's launching tomorrow. So that's what I would recommend first. It's like in the next week or two, join this testnet, create a new validator there, withdraw it, make sure that it works, and that'll give you a good feeling. In the next couple of weeks, I think client teams are going to be in a spot where their code is stable enough that we can start forking testnets. So we have 2 existing testnets, Sepolia and Gordy. It's not clear yet which one will fork first, but the biggest difference between the 2 is that Sepolia has a closed validator set, so not anyone can be, and Gordy has an open one. We'll fork those 2. Again, validators can take part in the Gordy fork and run through that, make sure everything is fine. Once those 2 have run, usually we need a couple weeks between them, or at least a week between them to make sure that things are fine. Then we'd be looking at forking mainnet. So it always depends, on how many bugs we find, is there some weird edge case we didn't think about our clients already. But I think, if in the next month or so we're looking at doing like the launch of this new testnet and then fork, having code out ready to fork testnets, that brings you're probably forking the testnet sometime in March. And assuming everything goes well, maybe sometime late March, April-ish is when you'd be looking at something on mainnet. Again, if we find a bug, it takes 2 weeks to fix the bug. Obviously, maybe it's like not mid-April, maybe it's early May. So I don't want to give a date mostly for those reasons, because like we never quite know. But I think as a validator, as a node operator, like starting this week, there's like stuff you can do to get ready for the fork. And that's the thing that'll give you the sense as a user, like how close are we? Because like you'll be running the same software that like the testing and DevOps teams and client teams are running. Yeah.
Awesome. And I'm also supposed to ask you how the community can get involved. And I think you made that pretty clear. We can get involved with testnets. We can run them. And I acknowledge you would want to be someone who is comfortable running a validator and already has either the hardware or VPS for that. But it is a fun experience. I've been running these testnets for a long time. So I really encourage people who are watching to play along with that. And so I think I'm going to turn it back over to Nix and Ben at this point.
Awesome. So Ben, I want to talk a little bit about how withdrawals are going to work in practice. So can you tell us a little bit about how like skimming rewards is going to work versus just full withdrawals?
Yeah, for sure. So I think we should just recap on this validator credential thing first. So there are two ways that your validator can be set up now. There's the 0x00, that's the old BLS style, and there's the 0x01, which is the new, and you just give it an ETH address. And this is how the beacon chain will know where to send your ETH. If you got a 0x01 address, it knows to send your ETH to a regular ETH account when it gets withdrawn. So you're all good. You don't need to do anything. It will just happen automatically. If you have the old style 0x00 credentials that the beacon chain started out with and was standard for the first 6 months or so, then you're going to need to change to the new sort. And you're not going to be alone. I ran the numbers yesterday. There are, in round numbers, 300,000 validators with old style credentials and 200,000 with new style. So the majority will need to change credentials. And to do that, yeah, go on.
How do people figure out whether or not they have 0x01 credentials or 0x00 credentials?
Yeah.
Or where can they go to figure that out?
You can look in your original deposit information if you still have it. It will be under the withdrawal credential field. However, I expect, and Buddha, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you can see this on Beacon Chain, right? Just visit your validator and it'll be there under withdrawal credential somewhere. And
so on your validator page, if you press on the deposit tab, it's hyperlinked to your address. So if your withdrawal credential is hyperlinked to your address, then you are set. If not, you have to change.
It would be awesome if you highlighted those under withdrawal credentials where it gives the whole hex address. If you highlighted the first 4 digits so that it would be very clear to anybody peeking at it that that's what they're looking for.
It's already doing that. If you take a look.
Whoa.
Sweet. So what you're looking at is, as Fizz alluded, is the first 4 characters. So the first 3 will always be 0x0. Then you'll either have 0, which means old style, or you'll have a 1, which is new style, and you're all good. And there's a process to update that, and maybe we can talk about that in a minute. But let's come back to your question, Nix, which is around this skimming. So as Tim mentioned, the way that this has been implemented is that there's an automatic process by which the beacon chain will push rewards to Ethereum addresses. And so every slot, every block on the beacon chain, so every 12 seconds, 16 validators will be considered, will have some balance transferred across to the Ethereum mainnet. And for most of them, it will just be the reward, since this was last done, the last time that scan came along, which will just be, a few thousand gwei or something like that. It'll be a tiny increment, unless you got some block reward, which you'll have a bit more. And this will happen. So if all 500,000 validators get converted over to 0x01 credentials, this will go around about every 4.5 days. So every 4.5 days, your validator will have a little bit of balance skimmed off into your ETH1 address. And it will be kept at a level of 32 Ether, which is the minimum for a full stake. and that'll go around. So in the early days, just 200,000 validators have these addresses. So in every 2 days or so, you'll get this little increment in your Ethereum account as it comes across. If you exit and you want to stop validating, I mean, you don't, but if you must, then you need to send a voluntary exit message, which is you can already do. You can do that today if you wish. And then when this scan through the validator set happens, rather than just skimming off the top down to 32 ETH, it will take the whole balance once your validator is exited and withdrawable, and that will get sent over to your Ethereum address, and you're done. You're fully out of the beacon chain at that point, and you have all your balance and stake on your ETH1 address. Yeah, what have I missed? Does that cover the bases?
I think it pretty much did. Did anybody else have questions about that? All right. Is there anything else from the client perspective, or anything else that like solo validators should be worrying about for withdrawals or for this fork?
Yeah, so I think the main thing is this credential change, right? So, for most users, so the 200,000 who have the 0x01 creds, it's just going to happen completely automatically, and just check your ETH1 account balance at some stage, and you'll see the balance going up. So those of us who have old credentials, the 0x00 BLS credentials, we need to do this extra step before we become eligible for withdrawals. And until we do that, then everything continues as it does now, with all of our rewards accruing on the beacon chain and growing there. So that involves digging out our withdrawal key, from when we made our deposit, which might be like 2.5 years ago now. So you got to dig up your mnemonic, and then you've got to sign a transaction to change to an normal Ethereum address. And there are a number of concerns around this. I mean, some people will have lost their mnemonics, and basically that's game over. There's nothing can be done. And I've lost Nick's, just vanished. Yeah, I'll press on regardless. So, like losing any Ethereum key, you're done for. There are a small number who believe that their keys may have been compromised. Somebody may have stolen their keys, and and what you need to do in that case is to get your credential change message in before any attacker who may have your key, because they're going to be racing you to try to switch to their ETH address rather than you switching to yours. And so there is an effort, the CLWP, consensus lost withdrawal, I can't remember, but what it stands for, CWLP LWP project. Check them out. They'll be around on EthStaker. If you are concerned that your withdrawal key has been compromised, that it might have been phished or something like that, then they will help you try to get your change message in at the earliest opportunity. They've got relationships with some big staking operations who have offered to, broadcast these messages in the very first blocks of after the upgrade. For the rest of us who are pretty confident that the keys are secure, I'm going to wait for a few weeks, maybe even a few months before I do the upgrade. Just because there's, not in desperate hurry to get my ETH. I'm just going to let it sit there and let the dust settle, because we've got these 300,000 credential changes, quite stressful for the network. Just going to let that happen and come in a bit later after it's calmed down and issue my message.
I'm really glad to hear you say that, because I kind of took the same approach. Like, I don't need the stress of doing that as soon as the fork happens. So I appreciate hearing you say that it's okay to wait a few months, because I'm just going to sit back and watch, like it's not going anywhere.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly right. Unless you desperately need your ETH out for some reason, there's no particular need to get out. So the final thing to talk about is tooling. How do you generate this message? At the moment, it's pretty techy. There's a tool called ethdo, which Jim McDonald of Attestant has been maintaining for some years, which can generate it. That's pretty low level. the staking CLI. So many of us solo stakers generated our deposits using the staking CLI that the Ethereum Foundation maintains. That is currently being extended to generate these withdrawal messages, and then you can submit them to your node. And the idea is you should do that kind of offline, air-gapped or in a separate box, just not do it online. So we're not putting that functionality in Teku, for example, because your withdrawal key should not be anywhere near the internet, right? It's if somebody steals it, then it could be a problem. So those tools will get better. Tutorials will come along. There will be help available, and there'll be process to handhold you through that. Be careful about where you get your tools from. Don't go to some random website that's advertising. We'll get your withdrawal change done and put your mnemonic in that. Please don't do that, because that will be a scam. So just use the official tools and look out for the guides and tutorials.
Yeah, and also we're also PeepanEIP will also offer a sub-page where people can upload their signature files, so you don't even need to be technical to do it after a few days after the hard fork. So the barrier to do it will go down over time.
You'll also be able to find a comprehensive list of links on the ethereum.org/en/staking/withdrawals website. They'll have a few links there deployed like next week, or I think the week after. So I dropped out for a minute. I don't know where we are. Do we want to move on to liquid staking?
Before we do,
anybody else has no more questions?
Before we do, did we cover, we talked about balance increase, right? Did we cover how that comes in? Should people be looking for a transaction? What does that look like actually?
I briefly touched on this, but the short answer is there is no transaction for this. So we call, I think it's the first time we've actually named those in the withdrawal spec, but we've called them operations instead of transaction. And the idea is that on the EL, there are a bunch of things that happen after transaction execution. So one example is calculating the base fee, and it's based on transaction execution. So this will be another thing where as the block gets processed, at the end, those 16 or up to 16 withdrawals will be applied to the balances. But there's not a transaction hash associated with that. And this is, again, similar to how we would apply proof of work rewards in the past. So when a miner would mine a block, they would get a credit to their address of 2 ETH plus whatever uncle blocks they point to, but there wasn't a transaction hash associated with that. So it's kind of weird. The good news is that it doesn't take up block space though. So those 16 withdrawals aren't competing with end user transactions for block space. They just sort of happen magically. And then I expect things like explorers and whatnot to sort of give interfaces for those to be visualized. But yeah, there's not going to be a straight up transaction hash that you can view here.
Thank you.
Awesome. Langers, I'm going to tee it up to you now. I'm going to ask you a two-part question. The first part is going to be about liquid staking derivative stakers, so people who just traded their ETH for a liquid staking derivative. And the second one I'm going to ask you is about people who are actually validating, who are running a node for these pools. So for what are things going to look like for LSD stakers?
Okay, so I'll kind of answer that in two ways. So the first way is kind of LSDs broadly. Broadly, it means that you'll be able to unstake your ETH. So if you're holding an LSD token today, currently you can swap it on the open market. So you can swap it back to ETH on the open market, but you can't actually kind of redeem the token for ETH through their kind of primary mechanism. So that's kind of one thing, and that's kind of broadly. Although specifically with Rocket Pool, so you can actually swap back to ETH with Rocket Pool today anyway. So from a Rocket Pool rETH perspective, it actually doesn't change anything. You can stake and unstake today, and it works. It'll work exactly the same after the fork. So that's kind of a little bit different. The only real difference is that there will be kind of more liquidity coming back, and some of that will be kind of compounded. So the APR might increase slightly, but that's kind of, you know, they're kind of the effects for LSD or liquid staking token kind of holders. In terms of Rocket Pool kind of node operators, obviously, as Tim said, you have to upgrade and to kind of follow the fork. That's probably the most important thing, to make sure that you stay on the fork. So that's definitely something to bear in mind. In terms of Rocket Pool, we'll have a smart node release that will go out that will include it, and we'll mark it as being fork ready. So we'll make sure that everyone is aware of what that version is. Then there is, so with Rocket Pool specifically, every Rocket Pool node operator is a 0x01. In other words, they're already set to a withdrawal address of an Ethereum address, because it's actually pointing at the Rocket Pool smart contracts. So from that perspective, from a credential change perspective, there's nothing to worry about in terms of that. The only thing that's going to really change is that your smart contract, which is what we call a mini pool, will actually be upgraded as part of our Atlas release, and so that it supports this kind of skimming of rewards. So currently it kind of handles full withdrawals, but it doesn't handle skimming. So as part of our Atlas release, which will come out hopefully before Shanghai, it'll kind of support skimming. And so there'll be some extra commands within our smart node stack to be able to kind of receive those kind of skimmed rewards and that sort of stuff. So that's kind of the big thing. There'll also be kind of exit and with full withdrawal commands within our smart node stack. So that's all kind of handled for you. Yeah, so it's super simple from a Rocket Pool, the node operator perspective. Actually, there is one thing in terms of solo stakers. If solo stakers would like to migrate to Rocket Pool, there is an opportunity, and it's kind of like a one-time opportunity. So if you're using 0x0 today, then as part of our Atlas release, there's actually a possibility that you can migrate to Rocket Pool. So kind of bear that in mind if that's something that you would like to do. We'll have kind of more information on that over the next couple of weeks.
Cool. Thank you so much. We have some YouTube chat questions that I want to throw at anybody who wants to answer them. One of them is, if many stakers exit as soon as it's available, will that lead to potential temporarily increased rewards for the validators that continue to stake during that time, since the number of stakers is going down?
Yes.
Simple.
But that'll be tiny though, right? Like, because it'll be, instead of like 14K whatever GUI rewards, we'll get like 1450. I don't know. It'll be tiny, right?
Yeah, it depends on how many exit, right? So if half of the validators exit, then your rewards go up by square root of 2 or something like that. So 1.4. So but to exit half the validators would take a very long time, since we can only exit about 1 per minute. So it's not a realistic scenario. But yeah, there will be a tiny bump if many people exit.
So maybe lean into that for just a second. You said 1 per minute. So does that mean if 200,000 validators tomorrow say, I want to exit, they end up in a queue? What does that look like?
Yeah, so we limit to keep stability of the validator set, which is important for the protocol. We limit the rate at which validators can either enter, become active, or leave. Now we're familiar with the activation queue, right? Because it's right there on the front page of Beacon Chain. It's been there for since the beginning, and we can see that sometimes it can take a week to get your validator activated because there's this queue ahead of you. And the rate at which we activate or exit validators varies according to the total set size. And at the moment, it's 7 per epoch. So it's 7 every 6.4 minutes as the current rate. And as the validator set grows, that will go up a little bit. And as it shrinks, it'll go down a little bit. So yeah, approximately 1 per minute at the moment. So, if 60 validators want to exit, it'll take them an hour and, and so on and so on. I'm not going to do math live on YouTube, I'm afraid. I draw the line.
Another staking question or another YouTube question. Is there a potential for slashing events due to possible exit mistakes?
No.
So the only way that you can be slashed is either by maliciously attacking the network, which would take a lot of technical know-how and getting really into your validator, or by running 2 instances at once. And if you're exiting one of your validators, you're not likely to try to be duplicating your validator. So it would be nearly impossible for you to get slashed by trying to exit. When and where will people be able to tell where they are in the exit queue?
That's one for Buddha, I think.
Yeah, hopefully they will see it on our website.
Excellent. So keep your eye on.
Not immediately, but we have a countdown on when the next withdrawal will be processed approximately. But I don't think we have a time on when the full withdrawal will be processed yet.
Yeah, so what it looks like in protocol is when you send a voluntary exit message, you are assigned an exit epoch, which is some distance in the future. And the distance in the future depends on the length of the exit queue. So it might be tomorrow or it might be next month. But that number will be in your validator record. So that's the epoch at which you can turn off your validator without any penalties. You have to keep validating until that point in order to not be penalized. But as soon as you hit that epoch, then you can stop. So you issue your voluntary exit message, it's processed by the chain, your exit epoch is written into your validator record at that point, and when the chain reaches that epoch, you can then turn off your validator. So if you know how to use your RPC API on your node, you can just look at your validator record and the numbers there, or I'm sure Beacon Chain will expose that information.
Okay, cool. I'm not sure if we addressed this one, mostly because I'm not sure what one of these words means. Somebody asked, will there be a setting for automatic withdrawal of the exident of ETH? I currently have in my node. Does anybody have a guess on what that means? Exident?
Yeah, I think that's taken care. Yeah, I think that's taken care of by the withdrawal sweep. So if you're still active as a validator, then anything above 32 ETH will be swept to the ETH1 account when it's your validator's picked for to have a withdrawal done. If you're not active anymore, if you're withdrawable, then anything above 0 ETH, so all of it will be sent over to the ETH1 chain. You don't have to do anything different or special. Once you've exited, sent your voluntary exit message, your validator has become exited and then withdrawable, then your whole balance and stake will get sent over to the Ethereum mainnet when it's turn to be considered.
And for everyone else who just looked up exident, it means excess. So that makes it much easier for us normies.
Interesting question. Any chance a validator could be in the middle of a sync committee assignment while in queue?
Yeah, sure. Until your validator is exited, which it could be very quick if there's no queue, or it could be several months if there's a long queue. Till it's exited, it has to perform its duties as normal, otherwise it receives penalties, and it's eligible to receive all the normal rewards, so sync committee, block rewards, attestation rewards. So you're a fully functioning validator until the moment at which you hit that epoch at which you're marked as exited. And depending on queue length, that's either a few hours or a few days or a few weeks or months even.
What happens if the whole sync committee exits, like during the committee period? Like, is the committee empty now? Or...
Yeah, that's an interesting edge case. Might need to look into that. In principle, that you can lose 7 per epoch, and there are 512 in a committee. And I refer you to my previous remarks about doing math on YouTube.
Anybody else see any questions? Can an exit occur if your validator is offline, or does it get the normal penalties until exit epoch is reached and then goes into the queue?
Yeah, you're fully. I mean, there's not really a queue. I mean, this queue is a bit of a misnomer. You are assigned an exit epoch depending on how many where the previous validator's exit epoch was. So until you hit that, you are fully functioning as a validator, and you'll receive normal penalties and normal rewards, and you basically have no choice about that. Only when you hit that exit epoch can you turn your validator off, and there's no point running it any longer. You are then inactive.
Cool. Does anybody else have any questions?
Have a clarification here. No point in running the validator, but there's still added benefit for running the node on the network.
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay.
Benefit to the network, yeah.
And I think the primary benefit of that we picked up is that it reduces the propagation of bad blocks. So more healthy nodes makes us more robust by not propagating bad blocks on the network.
Awesome. Does anybody have anything else they want to? We're gonna really quick talk about the next call, and then we're gonna have Pooja say a little bit about the PeepanEIP series. Anybody have any other questions or things they want to say about withdrawals? All right. So just a reminder, the next call is going to be a technical call geared towards node operators. So please drop any questions that you want answered in the EthStaker Discord, the EthStaker subreddit, wherever you can contact us. We would love to have more questions that node operators want to know to be able to add to that agenda. The third call will just be an update, a general overview of new things we've learned since this call. Fourth one will be a live stream, watch party. And with that, I'm going to pass it to Pooja to talk about the client diversity survey and the PeepanEIP series.
Thank you, Nick. So I would like to talk about a few things which I think is going to be probably helpful for users who are looking for some information around this particular upgrade. And then we will request existing users to consider a survey. Starting with PeepanEIP, for this upgrade, Shanghai and Capella upgrade, we have recorded 6 episodes, which covers all the 4 core EIPs which are being considered for this upgrade. The 5th EIP, which is definitely not a part of it, but will be considered, of course, because it's a meta-EIP 6049 deprecate self-destruct. We will be planning to have its overview planned with the author very soon. This series can also provide you information about the testing, as we know that Zhejiang public testnet is already available. It's going to be available from tomorrow onwards at 1500 UTC is the Genesis time decided for it. So if you want to learn more about the testing or how you can participate in that, I think we have quite a few information available for you, provided by Paritosh, Mario, and Shaive and Padus. It's a kind of technical deep dive which could be helpful. Ben was talking about a consensus layer withdrawal protection proposal, which is basically an interface proposal. It's not a part of the upgrade, but as he was explaining, this could be very useful for stakers and node operators. For that, we have planned a recording tomorrow. If people are interested to join the Zoom call, they can find the link on the Cathedral Discord. So this proposal basically will help to those stakers who may not have set their withdrawal address, or they may be using the older version as it was explained earlier. So yeah, you can share your questions for the guest and maybe join the call to learn more about it. Other than that, I would like to maybe take a few minutes to talk about the client diversity survey. So people here on the call and who are listening are already aware of the client diversity, that it is being promoted in Ethereum because we want to be a decentralized chain and we want to have both our network, Ethereum execution layer and consensus layer, to be as much as distributed. This morning I checked the stats and it looked really good on the consensus side, like Lighthouse catching up with Prism, Teku, and Nimbus fairly distributing their status. This is really good. But we would like to have this similar kind of situation for execution layer as well. Right now, it doesn't seem that pretty, though the percentage has initially decreased what it was there 4 months ago, and now Geth is at 62%, and Nethermind, Aragon Days who are trying to catch up. I would like to request to everyone who are running this Ethereum node for whatever reason, for even for supporting the network, for validating, or for whatever reason, please consider taking out time to respond to this survey. I know many people on the call and who are listening may already have responded to. So if you have done it, please share it with people whom you think could be helpful to add their response. I'm happy to share that we have received over 100 responses, but with over 100,000 validators, we could expect some more responses. So yeah, be considerate towards the client development team, provide your input, share your thoughts, and reach us at EthCat Discord if you have any question or anything information you are looking for us to be providing through our PeepanEIP video series. Thank you.
Pooja, where can people find that staking survey link?
Okay, I'm gonna share the link that was provided on the on EthStakers Discord. Thank you, EthStakers team, for providing us this short link. It's a tiny.cc/ECH survey.
Cool. So that's tiny.cc/ECH survey. Cool. Remy, do you want to talk a little bit about the POAP?
Yes, as usual, we have a POAP for today's call. So for the withdrawal call series 1, we have this POAP that you can claim. I'll send the link in the YouTube chat. I will also put the link to get the POAP in the video description for the people who are going to watch this video on the VOD. So go there. We're using the usual POAP checkout system, so you have to send a small amount to claim the POAP for today's call.
Sweet. I think that is all that we have today. Anybody have anything else they want to add?
It sounds like the big picture is EthStaker, Ethereum Foundation, Ethereum cat herders. We want to prepare everybody to get up to speed with withdrawals, and we'll all come together and have a big celebration similar to the merge. Maybe not as big because this is not as big, but it'll be a fun time, especially to watch what happens together afterwards. I can't wait to see those predictions. So it's fun to start this ramp up. I'm excited about it.
What is that one protocol that you can make bets on? We should incorporate that into the call.
What is betting? I've never heard of that.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for coming. We will see you at the next call. And it's not yet scheduled, so we're not sure what the date is going to be, but you can keep an eye on the EthStaker Discord or the EthStaker subreddit to keep apprised of what the date's going to be for that.
Are we thinking like 2 or 3 weeks? Do we have a rough idea? Oh, we
Sure,
don't know.
2
Okay.
or 3 weeks sounds great.
Yeah. I just come when someone sends me a link. So thank you, Nix, for sending links. Thanks everyone for coming.
All right, bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Hill.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.